Chest up, shoulders back. Welcome to Revival Fitness, everybody, your home for gains and brains. And if things look a little different today, guys, I am testing out a new camera. So let me do the obligatory thing here. But today we're going to talk about how to reach a 5-plate deadlift. The 5 exercises I believe you must do, or will be very beneficial at least, to aid you on your path to the 5-plate deadlift. If you guys have not seen, I pulled 5 plates for the first time a couple days ago at the time of filming this video, and it was a relatively smooth rep. Now I know the form Nazis were in full effect. And some of you guys, it really goes to show that you don't actually lift that heavy yet. And again, guys, I am a stickler for form myself in many cases, but on a 1 rep max, your form is going to break down a tad. And also, if you really think my back was rounding that significantly here, I mean, some of you guys, if you went to a powerlifting competition, I think your heads would explode. Because a little bit of upper back rounding when lifting 500 plus pounds is to be expected as long as you stay braced and use proper leg drive, as I did there. You're gonna be okay, so don't freak out, guys. But without further ado here, let's get into the first exercise I think you need to be doing, which is your primary hip hinge. I'm gonna give you a few options here. What I'm not going to say, though, is to do the deadlift itself. I'm not gonna tell you to do sumo or conventional deadlifts to improve your deadlift, because that's kind of self-explanatory. Oh, I deadlifted 500 and only did deadlifts when I was 16 years old. Good for you, dude. Okay, do you have video proof of this? What's that? You don't have video proof of it. Okay, interesting. I think most people can handle maxing out or doing low reps once a week or once every few weeks.
There you go. There you go, Matt. There you go, Matt.
But even so, guys, before I pulled this deadlift, I actually did change my training plan. There's gonna be a full video on that coming up too. Stay tuned for that. But there's this kind of old myth and this kind of rigid thinking like, oh, you just gotta deadlift more and more to get a better deadlift. And really, guys, once you have the form mastered, and let's be honest, the deadlift is not a hard exercise to master. It's a basic hip hinge and a back extension. That's all it really is. This might surprise some of you guys, but I did not deadlift from the ground in any capacity for almost 2 months before I pulled the 500 deadlift. What did I do instead? This is the first exercise I'm going to recommend to you, which is the RDL. Now, you guys know I talk about RDLs a lot. I think in terms of sheer value of an exercise, I don't think there's many other exercises in the category of the RDL. It allows you to work the same muscles as the deadlift with more volume. You get to control the eccentric in a more safe manner. You get the grip training, hamstrings, glutes, upper back. You can do Romanian deadlifts with the straight bar, the trap bar, which is my favorite. You can use dumbbells for Romanian deadlifts, but I think depending on your circumstances, that's going to become impractical, especially if your gym caps off the dumbbells at 100 pounds. Now, you can also do an exercise like a stiff-legged deadlift here, which is relatively similar to the RDL, except technically speaking, at least how I learned it, SLDLs start from a dead stop on the floor. Now, that's probably a little bit more practical in terms of direct carryover to the deadlift, since you're starting on the floor. But SLDLs, given the back angle, they're probably going to be a little bit harder to recover from for most people. So I would give the RDL a little bit more favor in this regard, but it's up to you ultimately. They're kind of the same exercise, broadly speaking. And then the third option here for your main hip hinge exercise is a much more controversial exercise, which is the good morning.
Good morning, goddammit.
And I'm going to tell you this, guys. The exercise I replaced the conventional and sumo deadlift with in my program was the good morning. And I know this exercise has become kind of spooky because of clowns like Athlean X and Greg Doucette who don't know how to actually do it correctly. And to be fair, the good morning does carry a little bit more risk based on the fact that the bar is on your upper back and you're doing a hip hinge. But once again, guys, that does not mean it's automatically unsafe. The good morning is insanely good at developing your low back muscles, especially because, right, the bar is on your upper back. You have to keep an insanely straight back angle to do this effectively and to hit a good range of motion with it. If you do a narrow stance good morning and go pretty far down like you see me doing here, your low back and your glutes and your hamstrings are going to get absolutely cooked. And again, since the weight on the good morning is going to be much lighter, unless you're simply ego lifting, than your normal deadlifts, you can do this for more volume. The biggest issue to me with the good morning is the fact that there's no real grip training component. Now, grip strength for me has never really been an issue because I really grip a lot of free weights in my training. So if you're somebody who does a lot of machines right now, you're doing a lot of lighter stuff, you really need to grip weight with your own bare hands, free weights, to really develop your grip strength. We're gonna talk more about that in the upcoming exercises. But I put the good morning in my routine, guys, because I went for this attempt right here with 475. You're gonna see here, I got it up relatively quick, but I failed to really lock it out. Whenever I did that, I watched this footage and realized I got it up quick, so my quads and hamstrings probably aren't the problem. The grip was fine, but that failed lockout showed to me that I needed to work on my low back and my glutes a little bit more. I threw in the good morning for about a month and a half or 2 months. Lo and behold, I finally pulled the 500. Now moving on to exercise number 2, a horizontal row. And this is primarily going to be a barbell or a dumbbell row. I think for a lot of guys, a barbell row is going to be the most practical here, but you can still use dumbbells if you'd like. But regardless, the row is going to be your primary upper back builder. And I see this in the gym all the time, guys. You probably see this too. It's also on social media. It's very prevalent. A lot of guys have the good physique from the front, right? They got the chest and the front delts and the abs, but you turn them to the side, right? It's kind of the Jeff Cavalier thing. They disappear. They're a Ticonderoga pencil. They don't have that thickness and density in their back. And if you want to secure deadlifts, guys, the most effective way to do that is to build up your traps and also your lats to an extent, so you can really get your arms snug against the side of your body and stabilize the bar. And especially the more novice you are, I believe your horizontal rows have to be done with free weights. I would avoid machines here, at least for your primary volume. You need to work on the stabilization, bracing the core, keeping the back straight without a chest support, right? Getting the grip strength once again. Now, if you're more experienced and you need the low back recovery, things like that, I understand using some machine rows, even for later stuff like kind of a finisher. But for your primary back work, your primary trap and upper back work, I think you need to use free weights here. And if you want to get really direct in terms of carryover, I think a pendlay row is a really good bet here. Pendlay row reps start from a dead stop on the floor, which kind of resembles the deadlift. Now the weight's obviously going to be much lighter, but you're going to train your upper back and your lats and your grip to kind of fire right off the floor when you do a pendlay row as well. But before we continue, ladies and gentlemen, it's the algorithm. Now, moving on to the third exercise, we got to go down to the lower body. It's going to be a squat. And this is pretty self-explanatory, guys. A lot of the muscles in the squat are directly used in the deadlift, namely the adductors, the glutes, and the low back. And same thing with the rows. I would do most of your squatting with free weights, whether it's a back squat, a front squat, or one of my new favorites, the SSB squat. If your gym has an SSB, guys, I would recommend you try it out, because with an SSB, you have to keep a more neutral back angle, which is going to work a lot of low back and glutes. Once again, these are two muscles you cannot avoid if you want a strong deadlift. These guys who want to skip leg day and then they want to come in and pull these heavy deadlifts, what happens every time? They cat back it and get hurt. It's like clockwork. Front squats are also a really good deadlift accessory. I haven't done them much recently because I've been getting wrist pain in the front rack position. Kind of like the SSB, they force you to stay upright. That's going to engage a lot of core, a lot of lower back, and the more upright you are, you're going to get a lot of glute engagement at the same time. Now, the normal back squat too is of course going to carry over. I do think you have to be careful though with volume for back squats, especially if you deadlift on a regular basis too. Once you're out of that novice phase, guys, if you can squat 300 plus pounds for reps, deadlift 350, 400 plus for reps, and you're doing that every single week, you need to be careful about your axial loading accumulating on your body. So if you like to do back squats and deadlift, and you start to notice your back's getting kind of sore, don't risk it, swap something out. So don't skip leg day if you want a serious deadlift. Now moving on to exercise number 4, a body weight pull. And this is pretty self-explanatory, guys. It can be a pull-up, a chin-up, an inverted row. You can do all three in some capacity and rotate them around. But once again, we're talking about grip strength. On a pound-for-pound, rep-for-rep basis, I think there are very few exercises that compare to simply holding yourself on a pull-up or chin-up bar. You're going to work on your grip strength. You're going to get stronger lats, which helps you stabilize the deadlift. You're also going to hit your upper back to an extent as well, some rear delts, some trap when doing these pulls. And also you have to account for the core activation too. So don't overlook those guys. Now most dudes are going to be doing pull-ups and chin-ups, especially the leg day skippers. They love this because they can add a bunch of weight on because they weigh 150 pounds, right? But in any case, a body weight pull with your raw grip, especially once you get stronger and can add weight to it, it's definitely going to have some carryover, and it's also going to help your overall back aesthetics too, which everybody watching here wants. And wrapping up, the final exercise I think you need to be doing for a 5-plate deadlift, some form of glute and ham combo exercise. And there's a few options here, guys. The first kind of crop are going to be the hyperextension, maybe the reverse hyperextension if your gym has access to it, or a glute ham raise. Now, most commercial gyms, in my experience, are going to have a hyperextension, the general machine. Most I've been to do not have a GHR or a GHD or a reverse hyperextension. If you have access to those, I would absolutely use them. I do not have the space or access to either of those myself, but they are without question effective exercises. For the hyperextension, people have this tendency to only want to hold like a plate, like up to only 45-pound plates when doing the hyperextension. You can hold more weight, guys. You can hold dumbbells like I'm doing here. You can hold an easy bar, hold up a barbell and load it up and do hyperextensions to really get the added benefit. But something like this that does not have a ton of axial loading, but still really fries the low back and the hammies in the butt, that is a great exercise to carry over to the deadlift, especially the lockout portion. And some people as well, especially the ladies, are going to want to do something here like a glute bridge or a hip thrust, really a butt-specific exercise with some hamstring component to it as well. You can also do any of these things, right? If your low back and your butt and your legs are really weak, if you're like a notorious leg day skipper trying to make up for lost time, do all of this stuff. You know what I mean? Rotate it in your routine, do different exercises on different days, but some form of a glute and ham combination exercise that really hammers the lower body without getting the low back too stressed out, right? There's no weight on your back. You're not holding heavy weight in your hands being bent over. That's a great combination to work on those muscles without stressing your body out too much. If you need more direct low back work, I think the traditional hyperextension is probably the best bet, followed by the glute ham raise, glute ham device, then the reverse hyper. But most gyms, most average commercial gyms most of you are going to be in, have at least one hyperextension machine. So start using it, add some weight to it, get your form down, and then reap the rewards of this overlooked exercise. But this has been it, guys. 5 exercises for 5 plates. Thank you for watching. Tell me what you want to see next down below. Like, comment, subscribe, and I will catch you next time.